Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's GTNews webinar, Future of XML Payment Management, Challenges, Evolution, and Benefits, proudly sponsored by XMLdation. My name is Tarika Adams, and I will be your host. Our speakers are Juha Keski-Nisula, CEO of XMLdation, Hari Ratanen, co-convener, Common Global Implementation Group, NSEB, Manager Formats and Standards, and Juha Hakomaki, Product Manager, XMLdation. Before we begin, please listen to the following housekeeping points. If you experience any technical difficulties, please type them into the Q&A panel located on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. There will be a WebEx producer to respond to your message immediately. Questions for the speakers should also be typed into the Q&A panel. We will address as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Please ensure to send your questions to all panelists, otherwise we may not be able to read them out loud. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, so if you miss anything or think a colleague would be interested, you will be sent a link to access the recording within the next week. I'd now like to hand you over to our first speaker today, Juha Keski-Nisula. Welcome, Juha, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Global Treasury News webinar begins. I wish you all welcome to Global Treasury News webinar, Future of XML Payment Management. XML revolution is ongoing. As we know, SEPA in Europe is only one step in achieving global standardized financial messaging. In this webinar, we will discuss of global standardization process based on ISO 20022 and XML technology. We will explore and describe XML management and why XML management is essential. Details are as important as the structure in XML payment management. Speakers in this webinar are Mr. Hari Rantanen from SEB Bank, Mr. Juha Hakomaki from XMLdation Company, and my name is Juha Keski-Nisula. I am the CEO of XMLdation Company. We start this webinar with Harry's presentation, Future of ISO 20022 Payment Management. Second, Juha Hakomaki describes the concept of XML management. Third, I shall give you a short overview of XMLdation Service. In the end, we have time for questions and answers. Once more, welcome to this webinar. I hand over the speech to Mr. Hari Rantanen.
All right, hello. Hari Rantanen is my name, and good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the globe. Welcome to this webinar also on behalf of me. I'm representing here mostly the Common Global Implementation Group that is making harmonization on the ISO 20022 payment management globally, but also representing SEB, who is my employer. So I have a long experience on making these exercises with large corporate groups when they have been trying to harmonize and centralize the liquidity and cash management with multiple banks, which has been a challenge. And it has been now for a while when we have had this new tool or set of tools from ISO 20022 standard blocks, building blocks available, which is now really critical part of the future development and deployment of the payments and reporting and all the basic cash management transactions which the corporates are exchanging with the banks and service providers on the market. So even though we are coming from Europe, of course, this is hopefully a big interest for you on the other parts, on other continents of the world. We have done a lot of exercises in Europe for multiple years to make this happen in SEPA area. And if we had done this exercise with the old approach, which is the silo approach in payments, where we have country-specific and bank-specific implementations of payments and reporting, the SEPA payments would only be a new addition to the pain of implementing new standards and formats. And it was introduced and get into the play a little bit with that kind of discussion that why on earth we need another schema and another format for making simple things like payments are a bank account transfer from one bank account to another. So the new idea of making this SEPA platform infrastructure work in ISO 2022 is giving us a new approach, which can be seen on the next slide, and that is the key thing that what we are dealing here with. It's the possibility now to focus on the payment processing instead of the technology, how we integrate different players on the market and different systems within each player on the market. So now instead of silos, we have a building block set that can be used for multiple domestic payment initiations, cross-border payment initiations. SEPA is not anymore a painful addition into the flows, but it's a natural element of the overall holistic view of payment processing. How is this possible? This is possible only because the clearing system, the infrastructure, what the banks are doing here behind the scenes when they deliver information and settlements of the payments is done now exactly with the same standard that the corporates are using in initiations, and finally the reporting is done also with the same way. It hasn't been like that in the past. Always the clearing system has been running on different system and different format. That has meant really country-specific and in the worst case, bank-specific implementations of payment initiations and the reporting. So now when we have introduced this new standard, it finally gives us possibility to get process harmonization in place. And we can get a situation from end user point of view where we have fewer amount of formats, fewer accounts, and the shared service center approach where the harmonization and centralization can be happening. We are getting closer to one process for payments instead of having country-specific and payment type-specific processes. I know the reality, it's not yet there, but now we are having a possibility to go closer to this harmonization in the processes, and that has been happening already. There are good examples on the market how this has really been the case for some of the corporates that have really realized this thing with their vendors and their banking partners, that this is possible to do, and they have been doing good work on using the new standard for multiple payment purposes and reporting. When the clearing systems are needed in the picture, I have an coverage on the next slide, what is happening all over the world, and this is really not SEPA thing, this is not European thing only. There are, of course, some non-Euro countries that are doing the same exercises in Europe, but like you see in the list, there are already started and deployed implementations of clearing systems all over the world, and lots of things that will happen on different countries, and not only in European countries, but all over the world, and that's really a big thing. And then also the banks are discussing within each other that the reporting is also getting into the better shape, so that we are getting into a situation where the clearing system is done with the new standard, payment initiations but by the end users with the same standard. The final thing that we need is the reporting, bank account reporting with the same standard, so that the reporting will be as accurate as the payment initiation. The clearing system is there also. So this is really a big thing. Now you can see the activities all over the world, and this is why this is a global exercise. And like I said in the previous slides, it's also really fun that now not only the corporates are doing this kind of harmonization, but the banks are doing with the same agenda, the same type of harmonization in their processes. So everyone is in the winning position, and when we do this in together, like we are going to see in the market collaboration team that we have established for payment initiation, direct debits, bank account reporting, and electronic bank account management based on ISO 2022 standard. When the infrastructure is there, that is like a vocabulary in a language that can be used. So, but that is not enough alone. We also need the grammar which is saying how to use the words in a good way so that everyone understands. And that's why infrastructure alone is not enough. There is also a need for market collaboration to set up rules how this new standard should be used in a global sense, in a harmonized way, so that all the end users, vendors on the market, and the service providers like banks can be providing the services with the new standard and giving the basic services in a similar way, so that this painful area of payments, having this history of bank-specific, country-specific, format-specific implementations, is now really a good place to make it better. This collaboration team is including both financial institution members. There is a list of them available on the slide where you can see really the global players on the market, and not only the banks, but also some interest groups on national and regional level. And then on the next slide, you can also see some non-financial institutions who are members in the same table, beside the same table, so that we have an instant possibility to discuss and give feedback of different guidelines that are planned and discussed in the group. So this is also some historical change, because in the previous life in tradition of payments, usually this hasn't happened, but now we have vendors, service providers like banks, and the end users in the same table discussing these items and getting the guidelines in a way that everyone can utilize and get into better shape when it comes to payment initiations, direct debit initiations, reporting, and electronic bank account management. And the final thing from me is from standardization part of mine. I'm also representing Finnish banking community in the ISO Technical Committee 68, and I'm also seeing what is happening in the financial services overall. And I wanted also, not going through in details, but show you what is happening beyond the payments domain when it comes to ISO 2022. So there are lots of things happening beyond the payments when it comes to bank account management, exceptions and investigations, e-invoicing, trade services, bank payment obligation, factoring area is getting the new message set to be available. Security side on the area is also doing their really large implementations based on ISO 2022. And not only mentioning these, but there are now over 300 messages in ISO 2022 in various, actually 5 domains that are covered by the ISO 2022 standard. And the latest version of ISO 2022 is also allowing new expressions of the messages, not only XML. So the standard is evolving. It's quite new thing, and that's why we need a good collaboration on the market, how to get that into the use in a better way. And this is a good place also to discuss in the webinar, together with the bank representation and vendor representation, how this new standard can be taken into use with less pain and better implementation and easier implementation. So now I hand the discussion and the presentation back to XMLdation so that they can promote their own tools, how to make this ISO standard live.
Thank you, Harry, for your very interesting presentation. Global harmonization process is really ongoing. Now, Juha Hakomäki will describe the concept of XML management.
Okay, hello. I'm Juha Hakomäki, the product manager in XMLdation company. And I have worked in the company right from the beginning of it. I have been involved with the development of XMLdation Service and many of the implementation projects which we have had with our bank customers. As Harry in his presentation stated, one mission of Common Global Implementation is to simplify the implementation of payment transactions and processes in payment domain. Corporates, software vendors, payment service providers, banks, clearinghouses, etc. This is possible if we succeed in safeguarding the integrity of ISO 20022 XML payment definitions. So each and every definition of payment transactions, like credit transfers, currency cross-border payments, and direct debits, as well as each and every definition of different messages like payment status reports, account statements, and credit debit notifications. They need to be derived from the ISO 20022 standard, and they need to be consistent with the standard. From global perspective, we can see that even global banks need to act locally. They need to comply with country-specific definitions, and all banks need to adapt to clearing systems. Within corporates, we can see the trend towards in-house banking and using different banks for different purposes. Multinational and global corporates pursue to reduce the number of bank accounts, but yet they need to establish payment processes in multi-banking environments. Software vendors develop their ERP systems from multinational and global perspective. It is important for ERP vendors to simplify the implementation of payment management and reconciliation processes. Software vendors respond to the requirements of corporate in-house banking by developing applications like payment factories. In each of these cases, standardization and harmonization of transactions and processes is the key and essential factor for success. However, we all know that the standardized and harmonized payment landscape is not yet ready. The structure, which is described in ISO 20022 and further defined in Common Global Implementation documents, gives the roadmap, but details the country and bank-specific business rules sets the traffic rules. This in total makes the payment traffic possible. According to our experience and feedback that we have received from banks and corporates, one problem has been to define the right and accurate implementation guide. Further, the interpretation of the MIG is also crucial. As we all know, the devil is in the details. IBAN and BIC information, as well as the management of our messages in direct debits, has been problematic. One issue is the differences in the reason codes, which may vary from bank to bank. Our experience of the challenges in managing and utilizing XML payment definitions in the bank are, for example, version management, so which rules and definitions are in production and which are under development, and change management of existing rules and definitions. Additional challenge is how to utilize the definitions internally within the bank and externally with the customers when bank is onboarding bank's customer to XML environment. Corporates and software vendors face these similar challenges. Country and bank-specific rules must be implemented in a way which corresponds to the definitions of the bank. In addition, there is a number of code lists that implementation must comply with. Such codes are, for example, payment purpose codes, rejection codes, and status codes. We have seen challenges also in technical implementation of XML management. Excel sheets are widely used in documentation and storing the definitions of details. Excel is also used in Common Global Implementation Group. But Excel has its own restrictions and limitations. Further, there is always possibility to human errors when the definitions are programmed to the applicable software components. At least somebody needs to verify that the programmer has correct understanding and interpretation of the rules definition. Documentation and sharing of documents is a major challenge. Number of stakeholders is huge, not only in banks, but also at corporates and software vendors. The complexity grows when we need to document the definitions for each payment channel, payment hub, or even different core banking systems. Our definition of the required XML management concept is the following. XML Management is a framework for managing specifications of XML transactions and definitions of processes based on XML messages. Why XML management then is essential? In case the business rule specification and process definitions are not integral part of the solution, they remain as isolated external document without any services. It may cause misunderstandings and may result in severe errors. XML management consists of services and tools. Users, the stakeholders of XML management, are both in the bank and outside it. Inside the bank, the stakeholders are IT department and product developers, customer support, onboarding teams, and in some cases, even cash management sales. Outside the bank, XML management may be used by software vendors, corporate customers, and their IT teams, and implementation consultants. We in XMLdation have faced a question by a global bank. The question is how to manage XML payment messages and definitions in over 50 countries. The answer is centralized XML management with services that are open to developers and users. Services which XML management should cover are developer services, user services, and knowledge base. Developers require an efficient service to define the rules, to manage versions and version history. The implementation of the rules, the programming, should be automated and thus produce standard code for each rule. The users require not only testing services, but also a possibility to simulate the payment process. All this should be supported by information services, documentation, recommendations, and other information. Efficient XML management requires also tools. XML management should be accessible via web browser and contain different user interfaces for different roles of use. Further, the XML management should be reachable via API interface. This way, it is possible to establish integration with automated testing environments. Tools and additional functionalities are needed for managing test files and documentation. In banking and payment community, this four-corner picture is widely used. In connection to XML management, this picture also helps us to understand how essential it is to manage XML messages. XML messages surround us everywhere.
Thank you, Juha, for very interesting presentation. As you now understand, XML management is really essential. Now, I shall describe in short the present status of XMLdation Service and our roadmap to develop XMLdation Service to cover all the requirements of XML management. XMLdation Service is an internet-based service for testing and validation of XML payment transactions and for simulation of payment process. XMLdation Service is not limited to SEPA payments. But as we know, SEPA is the accelerator in taking ISO 20022 message and XML technology in use in the banking community. XMLdation Service consists of two applications, validator and simulator. The user of the service, in this picture in the middle, uploads a payment file to the validator to the left. Payment file contains credit transfers or direct debit transactions. The user receives from the validator instantly a validation report in which user may see errors, notice, and recommendations. The user of the service uploads a payment file to the simulator in this picture to the right. The user then receives instantly response files or multiple files. The response file may be payment status report, bank account report, or credit debit notification. XMLdation Wiki information is integrated, part of XMLdation Service. This forms a knowledge base to be used for developing implementation guidance. Here you may see some names of our customers and partners. XMLdation Service is widely used. We have bank customers in 10 European countries. Our service is available 24/7. We have had users of the service during the last 6 months from over 45 countries worldwide. We are members in Common Global Implementation Group and EBA Association. XMLdation Validator is easy to use via web browser. User uploads the test file, selects the validation rule set, and receives instantly the results of validation. XMLdation Simulator is also very easy to use. The user selects the payment process user wants to simulate. User uploads a file to the simulator and receives instantly the response as if it would have come from the bank. We have selected object constraint language as a technology when we implement the validation rules to XMLdation Validator. OCL is widely supported. XMLdation has a technical partner, Nomos Software from Ireland. XMLdation Service contains today following functionalities. All developer services are today used internally as a part of our professional service. We have standardized way for rules definitions. We have automated functionality to generate Java code modules of rules. We have visual documentation of rules and the structure of XML definitions. XMLdation Service includes automated function to produce human-readable document of business rules. We have the possibility to generate test files. We have the possibility to transfer the generate rules modules outside from XMLdation Service. We shall continue our development work of XMLdation Service to cover the requirements of XML management. Our present XMLdation Service is the platform. We shall build on this platform all functionalities as Juha Mäki described in his presentation. This means that we are on the way to total XML management. MyXML. We have now launched our roadmap towards MyXML. Thank you. And now we have got a few questions.
Yes, we do have a few questions. Thank you so much for the presenters for giving us that information. There is someone who would like you to go back to the slide on the global ISO 2022 coverage beyond SEPA. If you could go back to that slide. Oh, okay.
This one?
And
No, it's,
yes. Oh,
I suppose it's that one.
perfect. Okay. So one question that we have is why ISO XML is chosen as technology in payments?
Yeah, that's a good question. The actually ISO 2022 development started from the payments domain. So the very first messages were regarding the payments. And the answer for that question is that the tradition of having standards nationally and regionally has been the most painful thing in the payment initiations and its reporting. So the answer is quite simply the way that the tools that we had before ISO 2022 were not capable of delivering the needed functionality from end-to-end processing of the payments. And the good example of this was the early discussions on what kind of format should be used in the European harmonization of the payments clearing and settlement. And it was a big discussion and long discussion of what country-specific standards should be used there. Luckily, the stakeholders in the really early stage decided that we should have a common way of looking into the item and see and develop tools that are more compliant for the structured delivery of the payments and their reporting, so that the end user needs are more in depth taken care. And the common development of ISO 2022 in the same time that the SEPA area was planned to be started and launched was happening at the same time. And when we have noticed in the SEPA development that this is really working, now we can see that lots of countries and lots of infrastructures are following the good proof of SEPA infrastructure. Of course, there are challenges. There are lots of places to improve, and that's why the standard is improving itself with the normal life cycle management. But that is something that is normal when we are dealing with still quite new standard, which is coming on the market. And still the list that is listed on the slide, you can see that it's quite good success story that lots of countries and their banking communities are taking this into the account and now doing their development based on the new standard.
Wonderful. Thank you. Another question that has come in is, what is your experience of XML testing? What are the most common errors?
Well, I can answer that. Well, after getting XML out of the ERP or other system producing the payment files, the most problematic cases are related to bank-specific requirements or business rules, and actually finding out what the error actually is. So the errors are usually related to missing or invalid data, but the most problematic thing is finding out what the exact error is. So the fixing of the error is much easier after finding out what the actual problem is.
Okay. A question, is XML only beneficial if the company wants to have direct integration with its bank to make payments and make moving banks easier?
Yeah, Harry is here. Maybe I can answer that from the CGI point of view, the Common Global Implementation point of view. Now, when we have this collaboration forum where we have the end users, vendors, and banks in the same table discussing this implementation in a harmonized way on a global level, we have now really good coverage of different payment types, direct debits, and reporting in ISO 2022, both country-wise, region-wise, and in the banks that are on the market. And now also the vendors have been able to deliver this tool set for payment initiations and direct debit initiations and reporting. And now it's easier for the banks to offer an harmonized set of ISO 2022-based services. And when the tools are on the market and everyone are asking to use them, so when the banks are considering delivering global services on basic payment initiations, direct debit and reporting, the most usual and most easiest way of delivering that is ISO 2022, because now we have so many stakeholders on the market applying to the set of deployment on that new standard. So it's the easiest way to deliver at this moment, and the banks can cover the biggest customer base on this new standard, because it's now spread all over in the payments world.
A related question that came in is, does XML have benefits if you are using SWIFT or FIDES as an intermediary connection for your banks to make payments?
I would say that this is Harry again. I would say that the channel question is quite irrelevant in this discussion, because what we are discussing here is the format. So, of course, that is a little bit meaningful when you have a banking service that can be offered only in few channels. But again, on the global level, most of the bank services providers are able to provide this new standard with payments, direct debits, and reporting in multiple channels. So that's usual case. But of course, in this specific question, if that is some kind of discussion point, of course, that should be raised up with the specific banking partners, that when a customer or vendor is willing to implement ISO 2022-based service, that should be ensured with the banking partners that they are providing the services in the channels that the customer or vendor is expecting.
Okay. There's a question about ISO. Do you know when the migration status in Europe regarding its use? Are there countries that are not even close to the full implementation of this before August?
Yeah, of course, this is something that should be taken into the EU level when it comes to SEPA deployments, and most of the countries are ready. There are some countries that are lagging some portion of the flows, but overall we are in a quite good shape that the most of the credit transfers and direct debits are already migrated. What is not yet happening in good pace, which is not that well mandated in the end date regulation, is the ISO 2022-based reporting. But quite many corporates, when they start initiating credit transfers and direct debits in ISO 2022, quite soon realize that they also need the reporting from their bank in ISO 2022 to get the end-to-end flow in a good way. We hope that everything will be ready in August 1st, 2014, but of course, the services are already there. These are exceptions that are not ready, so there's no obstacle of doing and starting to develop new services based on the SEPA infrastructure, because that is there, it's working, and most of the transactions are already done in SEPA format and SEPA platform.
Okay. This question is specifically for Hari. From a P2P and U.S. payments perspective, The ISO standards appear to support use cases for email payments and outsourced checks, but it is less clear that there is a standard implementation guidelines for these cases. Can you clarify this status?
Yeah, not being a U.S. member of CGI working group, I still know quite well that our groups, the working groups in Common Global Implementation, are doing good work now when it comes to the, for example, lockbox transactions that are most obviously referred here. So what has been done now is the payment initiations. They have been already described in a way that is covering this use case, and also the reporting will soon be published from the working group number 2 in CGI with the lockbox guidelines of how the lockbox transactions should be reported from banks to the end users of ISO 2022 standard. So there will be guidelines available quite soon regarding this.
Okay, wonderful. There's a question about the actual simulation or the simulator. Can it handle validation services around R-type transactions?
Yes, the simulation tool also can simulate the R transactions, so different reject reason codes and things like that in different messages, depending on the case, like our messages reported in the Payno 2 status report, and also CAMTO 53 or 54 based R transaction reporting is supported by the simulation tool.
And what is the deployment model for XMLdation?
The XMLdation Service is a service running in the internet, so you use it via web browser. And with our bank customers, we make an implementation project and define the validation rules or simulation outputs together with the bank experts. And after the implementation project, the users of the service can use it with the web browser. The users could be both inside the bank, or the accounts could be delivered outside the bank.
Thank you. We have a few more questions that came up about ISO. Can you elaborate on the base reporting for that?
Excuse me, can you repeat the question?
Yes. Can you elaborate on the ISO 20022 base reporting?
Yeah, so that's the CAMT messages number 53, 52, and 54. So end of day statement, credit debit notifications, and intraday reporting or account report. So those 3 messages are also covered by the Common Global Implementation Guideline Group in the working group number 2. So I was referring to that need that when the customers and end users are harmonizing their payment and direct debit initiations for ISO 2022 standard, quite soon they realize that the reporting, which is usually based on MT940s or Edifactor or some other local standards, is not good enough for delivering this good end-to-end functionality. And that's why it's quite soon required by the end users from their banks that they are able to deliver good ISO 2022-based reporting with all the details that are delivered in the initiations and clearing system. So that is the key thing, that we have end-to-end processing so that the corporates can focus on their own internal processes when they execute outgoing payments and reconcile both them and the incoming transactions in a most STP way, so that they can automate the process. And there we need really good structured reporting together with the initiations, which are already done in the same standard.
another question about ISO posed to Hari. Do you see the European Commission taking a more clear stance on ISO reporting messages as they did for the pay messages?
This is a good question, which is quite easy to answer. On the bank statement, when the delivery of CAMT reports are done by the bank, unfortunately or fortunately, you can say it from each point of view, there are lots of other transactions too, not only the SEPA transactions, but there are bank-specific transactions from other parts of the globe or from other continents. So it's really hard to mandate on European level any kind of mandatory reporting based on ISO 222 because it's not only SEPA transactions that are reported on the bank statements, but also lots of other types of transactions. So this is something that most probably will be left for the market harmonization, so that, like I said, when the corporates start to use ISO in initiations, they really quickly realize that the existing reporting in various formats is not good enough, and they will start requiring the harmonized way of reporting. It has lots of benefits when most of the global banks are delivering the reporting in a similar way, in similar standard, following the CGI guidelines. Then the corporate can be able, with their vendors, to implement good harmonized reconciliation on that standard reporting.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hari. It looks as though we have one last question, and this is, what are the next steps in the XML revolution?
This is Juha now speaking. Let's say that we are now in payment side, and we see, as Hari has now told, and we have seen this is going forward, payment domain, payments, and account statement reporting or bank reporting. But the next big step is this whole financial value chain, what including invoicing, trade finance, and other issues where all 300 different ISO messages will be implemented. And this is going quite fast from our point of view forward. So real revolution is going.
Thank you so much, Juha, Hari, and Juha, for your highly insightful presentation. For the participants, we hope this webinar has deepened your understanding of global trends in XML. Additionally, thank you to XMLdation for your sponsorship. As a final reminder, this webinar recording will be sent to you within a week's time. We look forward to welcoming you again to another GTNews webinar in the future. Many thanks and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.